Hello everybody, in this tutorial we're going to make this animation here, which is kind of a Suzanne hologram. I think it's really cool. You can run on lots of systems as well, so let's crack on. Hey everybody and welcome. So we're going to start this by just discussing the different options that you've got to create that monkey effect that we saw earlier. We could use particle systems, we could use dupliverts, which we're going to use in this one, or instances it's now called in Blender 2.8, and there are loads of other ways that you could do the effect that you saw. However, I find this is one of the easiest and one of the ones that doesn't tax your system quite as much. I'm using Blender 2.8 here, so let's go ahead straight away, sacrifice our default cube. I'm going to add in a plane. Now, this plane that we're adding at the moment is going to be the thing that you're seeing that's being placed on either all the faces or all the vertices that are part of Suzanne the monkey. So let's go ahead here and go into edit mode, rotate that around 45 degrees on the Z-axis, and then just scale it on the X-axis inward slightly. Now we'll deal with the rest of that in a bit, but I'm going to leave that as it is, and I'm just going to shift it out of the way. I'm going to go GZ and pull it along this way. The reason why I'm doing that is so we can see both of the two things together in a moment. Let's go ahead, add in a new mesh object, and we're going to use Suzanne the monkey. Now you can use any mesh that you want in this particular case. And so this hologram effect can be used with any of your pre-existing models, and I'd love to see what you guys make with this as well. So we've got Suzanne the monkey here. We can go to our object data properties in the properties panel. And if I just open this up a little and scroll down, we've got this area called instancing. If we open that up, we've got a couple of options: none, verts, and faces. Now, it doesn't really matter which one of these we pick, it'll just look different. One's going to place these diamond shapes on all the vertices, one's going to place them on all the faces. Since there are going to be more vertices than faces in general, you're going to end up with a few more when we place it on verts. So if we click verts, nothing happens straight away. This is only going to happen if we parent the diamond shape that we've made to Suzanne the monkey. So let's go ahead and do that. Shift select, we've got Suzanne as the active selected, Control and P, and there we go, parent. And straight away you can see, that's a pretty cool shape. What's going on there? Well, all of these diamonds, one's been placed on every vertex, as you can see here, with Suzanne the monkey. Now I'm going to move this back on top of it. I'm going to move these diamonds back on top of Suzanne for the moment. Let's go ahead and use the outliner to select it and just move that back to x equals 0. So we've got the two overlapping at the moment. And the first thing that I'm going to do is go back to Suzanne. Once we've done that, we've got a couple of options here: display instancer and render instancer. We don't want Suzanne, the original mesh, to actually appear. So we're going to make that disappear. And we don't want it appearing in the render either when we go ahead and press F12 in a bit. Now that doesn't look much at the moment, but if we go to our plane and just scale it down, lo and behold, we start seeing it making a Suzanne. This is pretty awesome. Let's go to Suzanne the monkey and give her a bit more geometry. So we're going to use a subsurface division modifier to do that. So I'm going to go through here. You could use Control 1, 2, and 3 if you wanted to. So subdivision surface, 2 levels, and apply. And whoa, look at that. Straight away it makes a huge difference. In fact, that looks like scales on the top here. That's pretty awesome. Now we can see the effect of changing this from faces, as you can see here, to vertices. So the thing you can see straight away when we do this is with vertices, they have all aligned themselves in one plane, whereas with faces, they're stuck to the faces themselves. Now, if we, instead of just having vert selected, we select align to vertex normal, we also get a bit more of a pineapple version of Suzanne the monkey. So that's looking pretty awesome. I'm going to go ahead, grab this plane and scale it down even further so we can see through the model. Now that is looking pretty awesome. You can already see how the hologram effect is coming together. So the next thing I'm going to do is just set up the camera and scene. So I'm going to press 0 on the number pad, shift and the grave key, and just move round. Let's lower it down to about there. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And again, this is only rough at this point in time. And because we want a sort of a glowing hologram effect, I'm going to go to the World tab and just set it as black. Now we can go over to rendered mode. Now this works on EV as well as cycles. I'm going to preview it in EV anyway because it's just going to look much better. Let's go ahead now and have a look. There we go, it's updated when I scrolled. So we've got our model here, we've got a light in the scene that's giving us some illumination. I'm going to leave that light in the scene because what we're going to do is try two different effects when we're using this. So the next thing to do is with the plane selected, or I'm going to call it the emitter because that is essentially what it is emitter 1 or 2 M's. I'm going to call it 2 M's. Anyway, so let's go ahead here, go to our materials tab, add a new material, and we're going to call this, well, principled BSDF. Quick one on this. We do have emission on this, but it does not allow us to adjust the strength currently, which is a little bit annoying. So what we're going to do is just use a different type. We're going to use emission to begin with, which is, of course is off my screen at the top here. Now this is emitting light. We can have that bloom effect that we want to make it look more hologrammy. I don't even know if that's a word, but we'll stick with it. So over to the render tab, I'm going to click on bloom, and there we go. Starting to get a little bit of an effect on it. If we scroll back down to our material itself, we can increase the strength, and look at that. We're starting to be blinded by our little diamonds. Now you may want to change the size of your emitter at this point, either larger or smaller, to also offset the effect. Now you may want it as it comes together, because we're going to blow this thing apart and bring it together, you may want it to be quite bright when it's all together. And it's entirely up to you how you manage to do this. So there we go, we've got the emission happening, we've got the hologram kind of set up. Now you can pick a different colour here if you like, perhaps a nice blue or green, it's entirely up to you. I'm going to stick with the blue here, we did green before in the previous bits. Now the other thing that we could try here, and I do just want to show you it whilst it's in this sort of setup, is switch it from a emission material to just a glossy one. Now, I think that looks really cool. It's a completely different effect and not one I was going with. But inadvertently earlier on when I was scrolling up here during a test of this video, I hit glossy and was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And that's what you call a happy accident. So let's go ahead to emission and carry on. Now we've got that all set up, how do we go ahead blowing it apart? Well, because we've got lots of geometry at the moment here, we can use a displacement modifier. So if we once again select Suzanne here, and go to our modifiers tab and add in a displacement. So we're deforming, displace. And of course it goes a bit funny. I'm going to use a noise texture to help displace this and make it a bit more random. So in order to do that, I'm going to click new on the texture, and then I can go down to the texture tab, or I can click on the little toggle to the right hand side, and I'm going to go from type to image and movie to a noise texture. And I'm just going to leave it as that, go back here, and then we can see if we set the strength at 0, it looks like a monkey, and we can blow it apart very quickly both ways with negative and positive strength. Now it's up to you where you set your mid-level as well, that can really change things, and obviously that keeps a lot of the original information there as well. I'm going to set this as 0.5 for the moment. I'm going to bring up our timeline, which you will see part of. In fact, I'm going to make me disappear for a bit so you can see what I'm doing on the timeline. There we go, bing, done. So let's have a look at the timeline. We're going to key in these key positions. So I'm going to set a strength of 0 for the moment. So we just got Suzanne the monkey. And I want it to be exploding, well, as exploded, come together and then explode again. So in order to do that, I'm going to find sort of the middle of my animation here. Now at the moment, if we go to our output properties, we will see that we're running at 24 frames per second. I'm going to change that to 30 for the moment so that I've got nice divisible amounts. So by 3 seconds in, so about 90, I'm going to put a keyframe in for the displacement modifier on strength being 0. So I'm going to hover over and press the I key. And I want that to last a couple of seconds. So maybe up to 150 before it disappears again. So there we go, we've got our monkey solidified at that point. And now we can go ahead all the way back to frame 1 in this case. So let's go back to frame 1, perfect. I'm going to set the strength at maybe 10 or minus 10 and then press I and it will key in. And you can see that it's keyed in as soon as on the timeline itself we get these orange dots. Now of course at this point we can go to the end of the animation, 250, do I want it at 250? Probably not. Let's set it at 180. Let's go 210. So now we're on 210. I'm going to type in 10 once more and then press the I key to lock that in. And then we can just play back our animation. We can see it all coming together. There we go. It will hold there for a bit and then explode out again. So I'm also going to end my animation at 210 as well. Then it's just going to loop round nicely as we go and then back in again. Perfect. So a couple of other things here that we need to work on. The first one is that in the preview, what was happening was that we had the camera moving in and out as well. And that does make a big difference. So let's select our camera and do a bit more keying. So let's go ahead, open up here, and we're just going to move it along the y-axis further out. So let's say here. Now I'm going to turn off the actual playback for a moment and go all the way back to frame 1 because I want to see what it looks like at frame 1. It's looking pretty good. Let's lock in the camera there. So I'm going to press the I over the transform. Then we're going to move it in. I could have keyed that in. Forgot about that. At frame 90, I'm going to press Shift and the grave key and move in. Let's move in so we're almost full frame like that. Key that in. Also key it in before we move back out again. So that was around 150. So key that in there. And then finally back out again. And what I can do here is just deselect everything, draw a border select around these, Shift and D, duplicate, and bring it right to the very end. And that's the camera moving in and out. Perfect. So we've got the main bit done here. And this is when I realised that this is incredibly dull at the moment whilst it's just sat there. How can we make it a bit more exciting? Well, what we can do is grab our emitter, as we've already noticed when we scale it in and out. Well, that's pretty cool. We could pulse it. But how about just rotating them and see what would happen then? So we've got this all coming together at frame 90 and at 150 disappearing again. So if I put it 10 frames before and after, key in the rotation at 0 and 0, which is a good starting point. And then let's say midway through, we just add in some crazy numbers here. No, scratch that. I don't want it just looping back as if it was just a reverse video. Otherwise, I might as well just render half the video and not both sides. So at 150, I'm going to change the rotation here from 000 to something else. So let's just type in some random numbers. It doesn't really matter. Obviously, the larger the numbers you put here, that will cause it to spin more quickly on that particular axis as we go through this animation. So let's go ahead, type in those numbers there. That'll be fine, and key that in. Now the other thing I do want to do is also key it in on frame 1 as well, so I know that it's going to start at 000 and I don't care what it does afterwards because it will reset. Now let's watch this middle bit. It's there, and look at that, it's actually rotating around, and I think that's probably spinning a little quickly. So let's go back to 150 and just set these as a bit of a lower value, so maybe 100, 90 and minus 50. Now let's see what's happening. Yes, that's better. There seems to be a bit more variation as we go through. Now at this point it's a good time to do a test render and see what it's looking like. That's looking okay, but it's not got the bloom it had earlier. So what I'm going to do here is close that down. I don't think I'm going to hop backwards and forwards too much in the outliner here, so I'm going to change that to an image editor. And under the render tab, display mode, I'm going to set it as the image editor. And I can just press F12 and preview what it's looking like. A couple of times I've had the viewport itself end up looking awesome, and then when I come to render, it's not looking quite as I expected it to. And it was a bit brighter earlier, so I don't know whether I've inadvertently played with something. So let's go to our bloom settings and perhaps increase the intensity of the bloom. Let's render it as well to see what was going on. Ooh, excuse me. And let's lower the threshold. Yes, that's definitely making it a bit brighter. Yes, I'm liking the look of this so far. I do need my... Oh, can I select? Yes, so the emission here, let's increase the strength. I think that's where it went wrong earlier. So I'm going to set that to 6, do a quick render. Yes, that looks really, really cool. So now that I've done this, we can do a very quick test render if we wanted to, or we could just render it out because Eevee's really quick anyway. So let's go ahead and set up our render settings. Now, ordinarily, I'd recommend rendering out to images, but in this particular case, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to render it straight out to an MP4 so I can share it with people. So making sure we're on the output tab, let's change the file format to FFmpeg video. The encoding, I'm going to set it to MPEG-4, and I'm not going to touch any of the other settings at this point in time. Then it's just a matter of going ahead, going Control F12, and it will start rendering out our sequence. And depending on how fast your computer is, this will take a few moments to do. Okay, so whilst this is rendering out, I'll just take a few moments to say thank you for joining me today. I hope you've really enjoyed this tutorial. It's busy rendering away there in the background. If you've used this technique yourself and you've made something, it would be really awesome to see what you've come up with. So share a link to your work in the comments. If you'd like to see some more tutorials, obviously share what you'd like to learn about down in the comments as well. I'll go through and read those as we go. And also check out the description for some other projects that I'm working on at the moment. So thank you for joining me today, and we'll let this finish off now, and I'll see you later on.